The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Go up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and your first-time deposit offer of $2 in bonus cash. On Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamepodcast.com/rhythm, sportsgamepodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Sunday evening, roughly 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on June 9th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, bit of a longer one, because it is officially grass season in tennis as we went through the French Open. Now it's time to get into a couple of 250s starting the grass season in Stuttgart and in Den Bosch. So we're going to preview both of those events, giving out some outrights and some overall lock and dog picks for matches at the end of the show. Before we get into that, though, do want to take care of some housekeeping. Want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also a reminder to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you consume the podcast, you can support the show. Don't forget to leave some feedback for me so I know what to either improve on or if you do like the show as it is currently formatted. So let me know. Either way, please don't forget to do so. Also a reminder to check out the SGPN merch store because we do have a lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. So don't forget to check out the merch store to support the show as well. Now, before we get into any of the actual preview of the two grass events, do want to recap what happened on Sunday. Very big day. It was a final in the second Grand Slam of the year, and Alcaraz ended up winning his first ever French Open, his third ever Grand Slam title, and on top of that, he also was able to become the youngest player to ever win a Grand Slam on all three surfaces. So congrats to Alcaraz for getting the job done, and also congrats to us, because for the lock and dog, we ended up crushing it, ended up sweeping the final, which is definitely a good sign. The lock streak continues, ended up having Alcaraz first set, minus 1.5 games, a minus 130. Made it a bit interesting as he gave up a break late, but he eventually got the break back again as he ended up winning the first set 6-3. Zverev has gotten off to some slow starts, and that trend continued. Alcaraz, though, was getting off to great starts, and he did so once again. So ended up cashing the lock for, I forgot how many episodes in a row, but the point is we have been rolling with the locks, and hopefully that continues into Stuttgart and Den Bosch. Moving on, though, to the dog, had Alcaraz to win, and both players to win a set at plus 125. Really, I don't want to say never in doubt, but it kind of was never in doubt. Alcaraz won the first set, then Zverev came back and won the second. Then Alcaraz looked like he was going to cruise to the third as he was up 5-2, and then he blew it. He lost 5 straight games, but then he eventually buried Zverev in the fourth set, 6-1, and the fifth set, 6-2. So not really much drama with the actual play. There was one moment I'm going to talk about in a second, which could have made the fifth set more interesting. But overall, Alcaraz was the better player for most of the day. You were a bit concerned maybe when he took the injury timeout. But the point is Alcaraz was the better player, got the job done, and we turned about a minus 280 favorite into plus 125. I believe I initially said Alcaraz in 5, so that was the exact outcome of the match, and that worked out well. So point is a nice job by Alcaraz, nice job by us. And, of course, I got to also mention a shout-out to Alcaraz separately because we had him to win the event. In the outright episode for the French Open a couple weeks ago, had Alcaraz at plus 275. I know he was the favorite, so I'm not going to take a full victory lap, but point is Alcaraz got the job done and ended up cashing us an outright as well. Now, I got to dive a bit more into the actual match itself because Alcaraz ended up once again dominating the final 2 sets to kind of put it on ice. I do want to mention, though, some stats and some overall takeaways. I thought the main takeaway from the match was Zverev's inability to convert breakpoints. Zverev ended up going 6 for 23 on breakpoint chances, where you ended up seeing Alcaraz go 9 for 16. So Alcaraz was more opportunistic, and he definitely was willing to, I'd say, go the extra mile to actually get over the hump, and that was the issue that Zverev struggled in. Zverev ended up breaking 0 times in the final set, went 0 for 5 on breakpoint chances. You saw Alcaraz end up going 2 for 4 on those. Fourth set, you ended up seeing Zverev win his only game via break in that set. So he actually did not hold a single time in the fourth set, and it just seemed like Zverev's overall serving quality took a dip. Ended up raising itself in the fifth set again as he ended up landing 75% of the first serves. But that's also the embarrassing part because Zverev ended up landing 75% of the first serves. Alcaraz only landed 48% of his first serves. So he ended up seeing a second serve, Zverev did, 52% of the time, and he still couldn't break, which was kind of the embarrassing part of the latter stage for that match. But either way, Alcaraz got the job done. Zverev, we know, historically speaking, has been a choker in big matches. He was up 2-1, and he could not convert. I believe the second time in his career that he has been up at least 2-1 in a Grand Slam final, and he failed both times. So not exactly shocked by the outcome. In fact, it was the exact outcome that we thought was going to happen. The only thing that was shocking was Alcaraz blowing the 5-2 lead in the third set. The rest I thought was pretty straightforward, and you saw Zverev kind of run out of gas there down the stretch. Now, I do have to segue into the big side plot, the big dramatic climax of the match, which was the double fault that was not by Alcaraz on break point against Bublik. Bublik, yeah, double faulting King, but that's not what I'm talking about. Alcaraz double faulting against Zverev, and then it was overturned into a redo. And you saw Zverev unable to convert the actual break point. So the actual circumstance, it was right after Zverev got broken in the 1-1 game. He ended up having a terrible game, butchered a couple of volleys. He had a couple unforced errors. Really just a disastrous game by Zverev, which is what I expected to see in the later stages of this match. Point is, though, you saw Alcaraz get the break, and then you immediately saw love 40 for Bublik. I'm doing it again. For Zverev, who you thought would potentially convert to break back and get the match even. And then you had a very, very controversial moment where you saw a serve that looked like it went wide by Alcaraz, and it was overturned at the last second. And then you ended up seeing the chair umpire come down, and he had to look at the actual clay, and you saw that he ended up ruling that the serve was actually in. And Alcaraz got another first serve. Eventually, he ended up fighting off the break point, and he held, and Bublik won one more game in the rest of the match. So to go through, I say Zverev won one more game in the rest of the match. I don't know why I keep saying that. My bad. Apologies there. Point is, though, after that moment happened, Zverev seemed to kind of unravel, and that was all she wrote. Now, I wanted to at least dive into a brief rant, not about the chair umpire, because it was very, very close. If you look at the replay, I thought it was out, but it's by a millimeter. That was very, very close. The issue that I have in the rant that I'm going to go on is the actual technology rant, which is the last year I can actually make this rant, because officially next year, starting next year, the French Open will be adopting Hawkeye. So they're going to be using challenge systems, and they will be using video to actually, and cameras to actually allow you to challenge calls on the court. Now, this is a main issue that I've had for a while with clay. I've mentioned this for a long time. A couple of clay events finally actually adopted the Hawkeye technology this past year. But I have to rant about it, because Hawkeyes existed in tennis for challenge systems since 2006. So we're about 18 years removed from the start of this actual technology, and the French Open, one of the biggest tournaments in the world, one of the, of course, 4 Grand Slam events, has just completely shunned modern technology for 20 years, give or take, and nobody has been willing to fully just call them out for it. Now, recently, Coco ended up calling them out for it. I ended up seeing, I think Roddick might have said something on his podcast. I know that Zverev was pissed off after what happened today, rightfully so. Point is, it just seems like the French Open has kind of prided itself on the uniqueness of the clay and the element of having the chair umpire come down from the actual, I'd say his post, and having to analyze the clay and pointing at random spots on the clay. And I guess that's their shtick. That's their thing that they feel like separates them from the other Grand Slams. It doesn't separate you for good reason. It's stupid. And when you have these big moments being decided by somebody standing on a chair feet away from the actual mark, trying to point and determine which mark is the right one, the entire concept is insanely stupid. And the idea that you're not only separating legacies and titles, also prize money with some of these calls, it's abysmal. And I am happy this is the final year of no Hawkeye, and that next year you are bringing in technology. This is long overdue. The US Open did it. Wimbledon did it. Australian Open did it. You've been living on an island by yourself with no technology back in the Stone Age. And it's been really painful to watch at times, especially if you're Zverev, who, I don't know if you've noticed, got absolutely hosed on a lot of these overall chair umpire overrules throughout the course of the tournament, not just this match, but it seemed like the chair umpire was all over the place. Saw the same thing in the Swiatek. Was it the Swiatek match or was it the semis? I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it might have been the semis in the Zverev and Rude match. Point is, though, when you have chair umpires who are standing or sitting feet away from the actual mark, they have to get down off the chair while maintaining eye contact on the mark and have to make sure they don't confuse it with the other ball marks on the court. The entire process is stupid. And I'm just thankful it's finally over. And I feel like it's pretty fitting that in the biggest match of the pre-Hawkeye era, it came down to this. So yeah, French Open, get it together. Definitely ridiculous. It took you 18 plus years to actually implement a simple review process that the rest of the tour has implemented. It's embarrassing, and I hope that all clay events end up implementing Hawkeye moving forward. Either way, though, point is Alcaraz got the job done. If you're asking my personal opinion, I think even if Alcaraz got broken and even if they called it a double fault correctly, I still think Alcaraz would have won the match. But you can't really think that way. The point is Zverev got robbed of an opportunity to break back and to give himself a chance to win the match. And unfortunately, that went against him. So it is what it is. Nice job by Alcaraz, and we ended up sweeping the lock and dog while also winning an outright in the process. So can't complain. Now it's time to get into the actual preview of the two grass tournaments in Stuttgart and in Den Bosch. Before getting into any of that, though, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because the NBA Finals are here, and Pick 8 is now live for the NBA Finals. Great entries, up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex entries so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks and more ways to win, the excitement is higher than ever. The best part, you go into 325 times your original entry. You can now use specials, boosts, and more on all flexed entries. And if you want to potentially sweat it out right now in Game 2, you can, because Game 2 is live in the NBA Finals right now. If not, take advantage of it in Game 3. Don't miss out on your chance to use it before it is gone. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the French Open final, which Alcaraz won on Sunday. Now it's time to get into the actual preview of Stuttgart and Den Bosch. So for this one, we're going to go Stuttgart first. Both tournaments start at 5 a.m. Eastern tomorrow, so just went with whatever was in the order on the ATP website, and Stuttgart was listed first. So for this one, going through the recent winners, you had Tiafoe, who ended up winning against Struff. Crazy match last year. You might remember that we had Struff to win it at like 20-1 or 25-1, and he lost in a tiebreak in the final set. Believe he had a match point in that one. Match was crazy, though, and we were on the wrong side. But Tiafoe is the defending champion. Berrettini did beat Murray in the previous year. Cilic ended up beating Felix, and you saw Berrettini beat Felix. Now, Berrettini, two-time champion, and he actually is going to be playing. We know that he was looking decently on clay, actually did win a clay title, and then ended up getting injured and ended up sitting out the entire French Open. Hopefully, he's healthy for the grass season, which is Berrettini's bread and butter. So we'll see if he can look sharp into this tournament. Either way, though, for the outright picks, I am going to get into the outright odds first. No quarter lines, though, for either event, by the way. So apologies if you were expecting a long breakdown with quarters. Do not have that. So we got to work with what we have. We only have the outrights to win the event. So it should take less time to actually go through the tournaments. And starting off with Stuttgart, you have Zverev as the favorite at 3-1, fresh off of the French Open final loss. I'll get into that one in a second. Tiafoe at 8-1. You have Struff at 8-1. So the two finalists from last year are both 8-1 as co-favorites, with Bublik at 8-1. That's why I was confusing Bublik with Zverev, I guess, because mentally I was already grouping them together because they were in the same event for the upcoming week. Draper at 850, Shelton at 10-1, Berrettini's at 11-1. You have Shapo at 14-1, Nakashima at 20-1, Musetti at 22-1, Medjedovic at 22-1, Safulin at 28-1, Murray at 28-1, Rinderknech at 40-1, Mickelson at 40-1. I feel like I've kind of gone through everybody. If you want to go with somebody that has a grass title, you can get Eubanks at 5,000 at a plus 5,000. So that's an option too. I am a bit short, though, on some of these outrights because, for example, Musetti at 22-1 is playing Perricard in the first round, who actually went through qualifying, ended up winning a crazy match, all 3 tie breaks in the match on Sunday. I believe he had to go through 2 qualifying matches, actually, on Sunday, and he got through them. Point is, though, Perricard's not listed. So I thought about maybe going with him as a long shot. I don't have a price, so I can't really do it. Is he going to win the event? No. But with that serve, I've compared him to Eubanks before. It would make sense for him to actually have a decent grass season. So keep an eye out for Perricard, and I do think that if the odds are right, then maybe it's worth considering. But I don't have odds on him, so I have to at least mention it. I did not include Perricard in the outright section. I would have if I had odds, but I don't. So I have to skip him. Anyway, point is, for the sake of this tournament, Zverev is the favorite, and I have to question if he's going to bother showing up, because he ended up having a very deep run in the French Open. He lost on Sunday. He does have a bye, so he does have extra time to rest in theory. I don't think he's going to suit up for this one. Now, the one thing that's the drawback, I should say, the one thing that's preventing me from officially locking in him sitting in this event is the location. It's in Germany, so it is going to be a home country event, and Zverev might feel obligated to actually show up for this tournament. But most of the time, historically speaking, if you lose or you end up making a Grand Slam final, you tend to immediately sit out the 250 that's right after it. So I do not expect Zverev to actually be in this event. I think he's going to sit out and drop out. If I'm wrong, then that's unfortunate for us. If you want to take Zverev at 3-1, you can. And if he sits out, you end up getting your money back. Point is, though, I do not expect Zverev to actually participate in this event. I could be wrong, but I am going to base my outrights accordingly because I don't see much value on Zverev after a very long and really painful loss that was 4+ hours in a Grand Slam final. He might try to take a week off to reset, and we'll go from there. Point is, though, I don't see any value on Zverev, and I think that he might sit out, so I'm not going to go with him. If you want to take him, though, and he does sit out, you get a refund. So it is worse, I guess. Point is, though, Zverev, I'm going to pass over, which opens up the field to a lot of interesting options, because Tiafoe, first things first, absolutely not. Get Tiafoe out of my face. No chance I'm taking him. I think he sucks. He's been terrible this year, and I think that until he shows any signs of life, at least signs of competent play on the ATP level, I'm not going to pick him to win anything. So I'm going to pass on Tiafoe at 8-1. Struff, though, I'm intrigued by, because Struff is also a home country guy. You might remember that he actually won a title in his home country, his first ever ATP title in Munich a couple of weeks ago. So he's playing good tennis. He ended up losing to de Minaur in the French Open, but he did win the first 2 rounds in straight sets. I think he's in good form, and he did make the final last year. The serve is very dangerous here on grass, and I do think that he's in line for a very good showing. If you want to go through the draw, for example, or at least for reference, for Struff, plays Gaboli in the first round, then Rinderknech or Mickelson. Might be fun, but Struff should be better. Then potentially Zverev. So if Zverev does drop, then you do see a good draw for Struff. And in theory, if Zverev does not drop, maybe Struff can beat him. Who knows? It's on grass. I think Struff can potentially win a couple breakers. Who knows? But I do think 8-1 is a good price, especially if I'm picking Zverev to drop. That means he has a very good path to potentially the semis in this tournament. Now, Tiafoe I'm going to pass on. I think Draper can maybe make it interesting against him in that section. Maybe even Hanfmann if he can get the job done. But I do think at the end of the day, Tiafoe is kind of an auto fade, or at least a worthy pass on these events. There's no way I could take him, especially at 8-1, based on what he's shown so far since he lost to Shelton in the U.S. Open last year. So I can't do it. It's not worth my time. And I think that definitely there are better options at 8-1, including the other 8-1 option. I'm going to go with Bublik at 8-1. I think that he's a solid option. So Struff, by the way, first choice at 8-1. Bublik at 8-1. Now, I know he can be a head case. Grass is easily Bublik's best surface. We saw him win in Halle last year. So he ended up winning a 500 event on grass, which is one of the bigger events that Bublik's won. He also had a marathon, or I should say made a respectable run in Wimbledon. So we do know that Bublik, as much of a head case as he is usually pretty serious around grass, and I do think he's in line to put together a good showing here. You're looking at the overall path for Bublik, and I think it is manageable. He has a bye in the first round, which helps. Then either Medjedovic or Morozin. That could be very fun, but I think Bublik would be favored over both guys by a decent margin based on his comfort on grass. I like Medjedovic. Is he known for being a great grass player? Not really. I think he's fine. Morozin kind of the same way, but I think that Bublik would be favored over both guys quite handily. You might end up getting a Bublik versus Pericard match in I believe, quarters, which could be fascinating, but I don't know if Pericard's going to get there. As a match against Musetti, and we saw Bublik and Musetti have a marathon on the Australian hardcourt season earlier in the year, and Bublik did win that one in 3. Point is, I do think it's a decent draw. I think Bublik can actually get by, and I think you're looking at what could be a player who I don't want to say is underrated, but I think the word I'll use is underappreciated on grass. Bublik is a guy who I know can be very annoying to back. We did win with him earlier in the year when he ended up winning Montpellier. Point is, I do think that he's a guy who should really never be underestimated on grass, and I think that he's in line for a good showing. So give me Bublik at 8-1 as well. I think those two, Struff and Bublik, being the same price as Tiafoe right now is insane to me. I get Tiafoe's defending champion. I understand that. But based on current form, Bublik, for the usual shenanigans that he pulls off in the clay season, where he's punting matches and doesn't want to be there, I actually will give Bublik some props. He actually looked better than he usually does on clay. So maybe he bought in mentally to some degree, and he had a little bit more seriousness with the clay season. The point is, I like how he's played over the last couple months, and now he's returning to his best surface. I think 8-1 is a good price. Now, going through the other options here, I'm not going to pick Draper at 850. I like Draper a lot as a player. Fitness is always a concern for him, and as a result, I can't take him at 850. Shelton at 10-1 could be interesting, but I do question if he's going to be able to win enough. I don't want to say tie breaks, but I question if Shelton will be able to actually break enough to win the event, and I do question if he is really, I don't want to say mentally capable, but I have questions or overall flaws or I should say I have issues with Shelton's game, and it's mostly about the shot selection and the impatience. He's worked on it, but I do have overall questions if I trust him to win a pretty decent field, or to beat a decent field, to win a title here. I'm going to pass. I think Shelton can make a run, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to get upset by somebody. I think if you're looking at the overall path for Shelton, buying the first round should be Duckworth. Berrettini in the quarters could be interesting. Let's put it that way. And then maybe Bublik in the semis. I think he beat those two guys, or at least if that was the actual matchup. So I'm not going to take Shelton at 10-1. If you want to, go ahead. But I think that I just don't trust him enough at 10-1. Berrettini. Now, I found a better price at 11-1. And I think I am going to take him. Now, I know it's dangerous because he has not played in a while, got injured in Monte Carlo, and then has not played since. However, I have to at least point out that Berrettini is once again a two-time champion here. He has won 2 of the last 3 iterations of this event. So, or 2 of the last 4, I mean. So with Berrettini winning 2 of the last 4, assuming he is healthy, I do like the prospect of getting a 2-time champion at 14-1. I think his draw is manageable. The first round could be interesting, though, if you want to actually go through it. Berrettini in the first round is against Safulin. That could be a bit interesting, but I think Berrettini's better on grass. You are looking at Chapo in the second round. I would probably pick Berrettini in that one, and then you would have to face off against Shelton in the quarters. So that could be interesting, or in the semis, I mean, but I think you're looking at, is that the quarters? No, that'd be the quarters. So point is, I think that getting the 2-time champion at 14-1 is a good price. Safulin, though, can be dangerous on grass. I'll acknowledge it. I remember that he beat Batista Agut, I think, in 5 sets in Wimbledon a year ago or so. But I do think you're looking at a guy who, assuming he's healthy, is dangerous. And we saw that he won a clay title this year. So I do know that when healthy, he can still win 250s. That's good enough for me. Give me Berrettini as my long shot at 14-1. I don't have anything else. I was going to take Pericard, but I don't see any odds on him, so I'm not going to do it. But Pericard, assuming it is north of, let's say, 45-1. If it's higher than that, I'll sign up and I'll take it. But I don't have that in front of me, so I might add an outright later on, but I have to wait to actually see some odds for that. But once again, my outright picks for Stuttgart, I'm going to go with Struff at 8-1. I'm going to go with Bublik at 8-1, and I am going to go with Berrettini at 14-1. Moving on to Den Bosch. For this one, to go through the recent winners, you have Griekspoor, who beat Thompson last year. Van Rithoven had the miracle run and ended up winning as a wild card, I believe, as he beat Medvedev in the final. Then the year before, you had Manarino, who ended up beating Thompson. So Thompson randomly a 2-time finalist out of the last 3 iterations of the event. So keep an eye on Thompson potentially. I'm going to go through the actual outright odds for the event. For the favorite, you end up having de Minaur at about 450. You have Paul at 550. You have Khachanov at 550 as well. You have Greek Sports 7-1. I have different odds for people, so keep that in mind. You have Korda at 850. Mannarino at 10-1. Humbert at 14-1. Thompson at 16-1, the 2-time finalist out of the last 3 years. Fees is at 18-1. Batista Agut at 18-1. Golfin's at 22-1. Raonic is back at 25-1. You have Papiron at 28-1. You have Mensik at 28-1. Kaza is back at 28-1. Vukic is 33-1. Dzanchop is 40-1. Nardi is 50-1. And you kind of get the point. Van Rithoven, by the way, is in this event, and he is 66-1. So to go through the actual main guys, de Minaur's a fine grass player. I think that he is going to have a respectable run. I didn't pick him, though. I just was not feeling it at 450. I kind of wanted a bigger price. I understand why he's favored, but there are actually a lot of solid players on grass in this event. Paul's a pretty underrated grass player. Greek Sport is good on grass, as he's the defending champion. Mannarino's won a title here before. Khachanov's good at basically every surface, so I think Khachanov's good too. Point is 450. I really did not like, at least the number 4. I think his path is fine. He has a matchup against potentially Van Rithoven in the second round, or potentially Bergs, but he did end up getting a bye in the first round. Then either Batista Agut, Husler, Raonic, or Thompson. I think de Minaur should win those 2. So the path is decent, I'll admit it. But I just wasn't feeling the odds. I thought 450 was kind of low. I was hoping for 5-1 or maybe even higher. So I'm not going to take de Minaur. If he wins it, would I be shocked? No. But I really didn't want to go for the price. So I ended up passing and going elsewhere. I am going to go, though, with shopping around. You can find other guys being favored over others and vice versa. So I ended up going with Khachanov at 650 as the odds that I found. So I'm going to go with him. I think he's a solid grass player, and I think people forget how good he is on grass because he missed Wimbledon the last 2 years. Ended up making the quarterfinals in Wimbledon. Then he was a part of the Russian ban because of COVID. So Wimbledon didn't have any Russian players. And then last year, he ended up having surgery with, I want to say, a fractured, it was either neck or back, but I think it was a vertebrae issue. A point is he ended up missing Wimbledon the last 2 years. So people kind of forget how good he actually is on grass. And I do think that he's in line for a good showing here. Very solid all-around game, good serve, and I think that he's in line to potentially make a solid run. If you want to actually go through the Khachanov path here, buy in the first round, then Vukic or Purcell, then either Greek Sport, Kekmanovic, Dzanchop, or McDonald. So that could be interesting if he faces off against Greek Sport, but I do think that he can make a respectable run. So I am going to go with him at 650. And I'm actually going to take the other guy that I said might be an interesting match against. Give me Greek Sport at 7-1. Defending champion ended up having Zverev, who was the runner-up in the French Open, on the ropes, up double break in the 5th set. So I think Greek Sport is in good form. Defending champion, also Dutch, so he does have the crowd advantage here in Den Bosch. I think he's in line for a good showing. And to go through the actual path, I think his path is also pretty good. If you want to go through it, Kekmanovic in the first round, who's not really good on grass whatsoever. Then Dzanchop or McDonald. Dzanchop, by the way, has been a disaster, so I'm not going to pick him either. McDonald can be decent on grass, has also not played many matches recently based on injury, so we'll see how McDonald looks. But I think that overall, Greek Sport is defending champion, and just on his overall form for the last 2 years, and even in the French Open, I think he's proven he's worthy of being a solid outright choice at 7-1, and especially in his home country in a tournament that he won last year. So give me Greek Sport at 7-1. Korda, absolutely not. No chance to take Korda. I don't trust him at all. I am going to go with Mannarino, though, but I did skip one. Sorry, apologies. I'm going to go with Tommy Paul at 7-1. So since I'm passing on de Minaur, I ended up kind of just scattering my choices with some close favorites. But I think Paul's an underrated grass player, and I do think that his overall game is in good form. I think Paul can be a guy that you have to worry about, and I do think that he's a guy who is very consistent. And even though he does not have a great serve, his serve's a bit underrated. He can ramp it up if he needs to. I can't say that he's an amazing server, but I do think that he's a solid grass player, and I think that his overall path is fine for this event. If you want to go through it, he's in the bottom half of the bracket as a bye, then either Papiron or Hijikata, then either Korda, School Kate, Golfen, or Nardi, probably Korda. I would pick Paul in that matchup. and then potentially gets to face off against the winner of the Kashanov and Greek Sport matchup. But I think at the end of the day, Paul's worth consideration at 7-1. I'm going to take him at that price. And for my last one, the one that I accidentally skipped over was Paul, but I am going to go back to Mannarino. I see 10-1 on Bet365. FanDuel is 17-1. So if you want to give me a price differential like that, I'm going to take it. Mannarino is a former champion. He was awful for the last month and a half. It's because historically, he is an atrocious clay player. His style of play is really not meant for clay, and you could tell that he was miserable out there. So Mannarino, I'm not going to buy into the recent form. He's better than that. We saw how good he was in the hardcourt season, and I do think that on grass, he is very dangerous. And the fact that he won a title here, I think, tells me that he's underrated in the spot at 17-1. A former champion at 17-1 who thrives on grass, I think you could argue that grass is Mannarino's best surface if you actually want to go into it. But the point is, I like his draw and I like his price. Give me 17-1 against Napolitano in the first round. He should win that one. Then either Brower or Mensik. Mensik I like a lot as a player, but he's had some injuries over the last couple of months. Then a matchup against either Humbert or Fees, most likely. I think that Mannarino would beat Humbert on grass if I had to guess that actual matchup. So the point is, overall actual quarter is not that bad. 17-1 is a good price. Once again, I'm not going to immediately panic because Mannarino had an awful clay season. He always has an awful clay season. So I think he's going to bounce back. I think he'll be thrilled that clay season's over and now it's his time to shine. We saw him win a grass title last year in Newport. We know that he's dangerous on grass. Give me Mannarino at 17-1. So once again, my picks for the actual tournament in Den Bosch, I'm going to go with 4 outright picks. We're skipping Dim an hour. We're going to go with Kashanov at 650, Greek Sport 7-1, Paul at 7-1, and Mannarino is the long shot at 17-1. No quarter odds, though. That's going to wrap it up for the actual outright picks. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But before we continue that, do want to remind me once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because the NBA playoffs are here. The NBA finals are here, actually. And if you're betting on NBA player props, then you need to get Rhythm, because Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game. Make it easy to go through and to find the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning the algorithm to give the best chance at winning. Rhythm pairs their predictions with graphs to help you feel even better about your picks, whether it involves DFS or bets. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by data, without you having to scroll through a sportsbook. Rhythm also allows you to create your own NBA models, so you can get AI-backed money line, spread, and total picks for every playoff game. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportscamppockets.com/rhythm, sportscamppockets.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the tournaments in Stuttgart and Den Bosch. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks for the show. Now, I am aware these matches start early. They start at about 5 a.m. At least that's when the card starts tomorrow for Stuttgart and Den Bosch. So because of that, I skipped the Monday card. These 2 matches are on Tuesday. You have a lot of time to get your bets in. I purposefully did it that way. Now, for the lock, I am going to go to Stuttgart. I am going to back basically one of the guys we picked to win the event, but his price was very steep, so I took the under instead. I'm going to go to the Kaboli and Struff match. I think Struff is going to win comfortably. However, him to win in straight sets is about minus 190, give or take. So I couldn't take it as my lock. Point is, though, Kaboli, even though I love Kaboli as a player, is really not experienced at all on grass. In fact, he is so inexperienced on grass. He's only played 2 grass matches in his career. Both of them were actually Wimbledon qualifying matches. As you can tell, he went 0-2. Ended up playing against Kicker, who's a relative unknown. At least you might know him if you're a challenger guy. Point is, though, did lose to Kicker 6-2, 6-1 in 2022. Then faced off against Fikovic, who I'm sure most people don't know on the show. And he ended up losing 6-3, 6-4. So he lost to 2 challenger guys on grass in his career. The only 2 grass matches he has in his career. And he's against Struff, who made the final here last year. He was in great form. And he's also the home country guy. So he does have crowd support. But at the end of the day, I think Struff should beat up on Kaboli pretty easily. Maybe get a breaker, probably not. Kaboli is not known for being a great server. So I think Struff can capitalize. I'm not sure Kaboli is going to break Struff in this match, but I think Kaboli is going to seriously struggle transitioning to grass. He did not have a grass challenger in between tournament run leading up to this event. So I think Struff will make the transition pretty easily, especially with him being so comfortable in Stuttgart. But I like the under 22 games here. I think it's a good way to take the favorite to basically win in straight sets at a pretty cheap price. You're basically saving, for example, like 80 cents by shopping around. At least if you want to compare the straight sets to the under. In theory, he can win in straight sets while also going over. I don't see that happening. Once again, Caboli has never won more than 4 games in a set in his grass career. That's good enough for me, and that was against weak competition. I think Struff wins this 6-4, 6-3, give or take, but give me the under 22 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to Den Bosch, and I am going to go with the defending champion. I'm going to go with Griekspoor to win in straight sets at plus 110 against Ivanovic. Griekspoor, of course, is the defending champion, and the home crowd is going to love him because he is, of course, Dutch. So you have seen, historically speaking, with Van Richthofen and with Griekspoor, Dutch players do very well here, historically. So I think that's something that's going to continue in this tournament. But you're looking at Kekmanovic's form on grass, and he's really not a good grass player. You might remember last year, he ended up facing off against Raonic. Raonic was off of a long layoff after injury, and he lost in straight sets. Kekmanovic is not a good grass player. In fact, he's 11-13 straight up in his ATP career on grass. So with his struggles on grass, I think he's going to struggle in this match once again, and I do think that he's going to look a little bit overwhelmed making the transition to grass, and with Griekspoor being, I think, a better player than Kekmanovic in general. But the idea that you're getting a better grass player, the defending champion, against a guy with a losing record on grass to win in straight sets at plus 110, I think is a very good price. And if you want to actually look at Kekmanovic's grass losses over the years, a lot of them are straight sets. In fact, each of Kekmanovic's last 7 grass losses on the ATP level, so last 7 losses on grass, were in straight sets. So when he loses on grass, he loses handily, and I think that it's a good price. So I am going to go with Griekspoor as my dog. So once again, the picks for the show, the lock's going to be on Caboli and Struff under 22 games at minus 113. The dog's going to be on Griekspoor to win in straight sets at plus 110. A reminder, those matches are on Tuesday, so no rush. You have a lot of time to get your bets in, but wanted to at least mention that. And a reminder that the next episode will be the quarterfinals. We're going to preview the quarters in Stuttgart and in Den Bosch. So we're going to be off for a couple days. Hopefully you enjoy the grass tennis. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on the WNBA show as well. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.